Those who live in first world countries are often far removed from the plight of the less fortunate. Plagues, violence, hunger, and war. Those ideas may pass through our heads with a glance at a headline, but the true gravity of these ideas is usually captured through visuals. My name is Emma McSpadden, and in this video, we will be discussing the troubling story of photojournalist Kevin Carter, his history, and his impact on visual communications. Before moving forward, I would like to mention that the following presentation shows graphic depictions of violence. Kevin Carter was born on September 16, 1960 in Johannesburg, South Africa, during the time of apartheid. Apartheid was a system of institutionalized racial segregation in South and Southwest Africa from the 1940s to the 1990s. From an early age, he made known his hatred for racism and prejudice. Growing up in a whites-only neighborhood, he would often witness violence against black families living there illegally. Carter also struggled with his mental health living in such a climate. After high school, he was studying to be a pharmacist, but was drafted into the South African Defense Force. During his service, he was beaten by fellow soldiers for defending an abused black waiter in a mess hall. Refusing to serve the regime, he ran away, changed his name to David, and became a disc jockey. When that line of work didn't pan out, he eventually returned to the SADF to complete his service, during which he witnessed a bombing in Pretoria, which helped set him on his career path of photojournalism. He landed a job with the Johannesburg Star and chronicled violence against and the mistreatment of black people during the time of apartheid. Carter was the first person to capture a public execution through necklacing. Necklacing is a disturbing form of torture. The victim's arms and torso are wedged into the hole of a tire that is then filled with petrol. The tire is then set on fire. The woman being executed, known as MAKI SKOSANA, was accused of being an informant to the police. Later on, Carter had this to say about the event. "I was appalled at what they were doing. I was appalled at what I was doing. But then people started talking about those pictures. Then I felt that maybe my actions hadn't been at all bad. Being a witness to something this horrible wasn't necessarily such a bad thing to do." As a member of the Bang Bang Club, Carter saw and documented this type of violence often, particularly executions. The Bang Bang Club was a group of 4 photographers: Kevin Carter, Greg Marinovic, Ken Oosterbroek, and João Silva. The group focused on documenting the violence in the townships in South Africa from 1990 to 1994. The necklacing photo was Carter's first work that gained him notoriety. However, his most famous photograph is of the Sudanese girl and the vulture. The image depicts a young, emaciated girl collapsed on the ground who is being stalked by a nearby vulture. Carter received much backlash from the image, causing emotional distress. Mere weeks after receiving a Pulitzer Prize for it, he took his own life. Carter's photography is interesting from multiple perspectives, as discussed in Paul Lester's book, Visual Communications. In particular, we will discuss his work from a historical, a technical, an ethical, and a cultural perspective. Lester's definition of historical perspective is as follows: a determination of the importance of the work based on the medium's timeline. Historically, his images have much significance. His work influenced Sudanese history and the history of photojournalism. In Sudan, Carter photographed images of victims of the Sudan famine. The images taken by the Bang Bang Club helped create an intense atmosphere for the South African government. By spreading awareness of the horrors through visuals such as the photograph of the vulture and the girl, the government felt immense pressure to implement change. Carter helped end apartheid. The technical perspective is the relationship between light, the method used to produce the work, and the context in which the work is shown. From this perspective, I am mostly looking at the composition of the photo. The child, the most important part of the picture, is at the forefront. She's calling most of the viewer's attention. The sinister, stalking vulture is in the background as a secondary attention grabber. The background amplifies the point that the foreground is making. The ethical perspective refers to the moral and ethical responsibilities that the producer, the subject, and the viewer of the work have and share. Ethically, this photo is complex. Carter received much criticism when this photo was released by the New York Times. People demonized him for using the girl as a photo opportunity instead of coming to her aid. It sparked a debate about when photographers and journalists should intervene on their subject's behalf. Unfortunately, Carter committed suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning after winning a Pulitzer Prize for the photo. The cultural perspective is an analysis of the metaphors and symbols used in the work that convey the meaning within a particular society at a particular time. Carter's message was clear. The situation in Sudan was dire. The famine was claiming the lives of children. Humans were collapsing and becoming food for the scavenger birds. The scenes were horrific. Carter's influence carries on in many photographers' work today, including mine. I will discuss a photograph I took in Iceland that shares some similar qualities to Carter's work. The photo holds some historical context. It depicts a sign in the Icelandic countryside that says, "Help us protect the nature." I took this photo in the midst of much debate over the climate crisis. During this time, Greta Thunberg, the young Swedish environmental activist, was becoming an international sensation. It is also similar from a technical standpoint. The foreground holds the important information, the sign instructing people to protect the nature. The background, which is the nature that needs to be protected, emphasizes the point of the foreground. From an ethical perspective, the image is quite different from Carter's. Carter's displays the horrors of famine. My image displays a humble plea to keep Iceland's landscape beautiful and to protect the planet that we live on. The moods are completely different, but both could be seen as hopeless endeavors. In conclusion, Carter has had a huge influence on photography and the uncovering of various horrors in South Africa. His work has been studied through multiple perspectives, and his unfortunate suicide at 33 years of age has sparked many ethical debates on wartime photography and the ethical obligations of journalists. Overall, Kevin Carter's troubling story and contributions to visual communication will be influential for years to come.